This ultimately always happens with games, especially like this live service where it requires constant dev attention to keep the game moving and alive. And with players in games, the relationship of that boredom factor showing up faster and faster as time passes, this was inevitable. But Dune Awakening, Funcom's ambitious survival MMO based on the iconic sci-fi universe, officially launched on PC in mid-June 2025, almost 2 months ago. The game promised a mix of base building, faction conflict, spice harvesting, and vehicle combat across the dangerous deserts of Arrakis. If you want to read this article, I'll have it linked in the description below, but I'll just be going over it and discussing how I feel about it. But the launch buzz was real. I played the early access, and it was really something that felt promising. It was on track to become the next big major survival MMO, but they're making mistakes, and I don't really understand why. Games do this over and over again. I mean, I guess I do from a business perspective. They get that bag. What's the motivation to really keep going? If people aren't asking for refunds, they made their money, they did their job. Now, what is the incentive to keep it going the way the players want it to keep going? Because what they're doing is not enough to satisfy the hunger that these Dune Awakening players have when it comes to replay value. According to SteamDB, Dune Awakening peaked at 189,000 concurrent players shortly after launch on June 15th. That's incredible numbers for a brand new MMO, especially. Fast forward just 7 weeks, as of July 31st, the 24-hour peak is down to 39K. 39,000. That's nearly 80% of a drop in daily peak players. And here's why this matters. Because drops like this aren't unheard of in big survival titles. Players binge, they no-life it, they burn through content in days. And let me be clear, I haven't gotten bored all the way of Dune Awakening quite yet, okay? I'm still out there building, testing, and grinding, but a lot of players, they've tapped out, period. Because even though Dune Awakening has depth, it also has huge gaps. If you scroll through Steam, forums, or Reddit, you'll see the same themes. Burnout. People hit in-game in a day or two because they've played 12 hours straight, and then they complain there's nothing left to do. Repetition. The core loop. Farm spice, build bases, fight over spice, repeat, can start to feel like a treadmill if there's nothing breaking that up. So it eventually just turns into like a farming simulator. Toxic PvP. Right now, a lot of in-game PvP isn't ground combat, it's just ornithopters and aerial skirmishes, which is cool in the moment, but it doesn't create long-term hooks, because this ultimately turns into griefing, where it's not even fun or fair. When I say griefing, I mean that there's something that players do where they swarm a carrier to the point where it can't even fly above, and they force it to the ground until the worm comes and eats the carrier. This is what I mean by griefing. And the developers are doing something to address this, right? They're adding some type of bounce effect where when you collide with another ornithopter, you bounce back immediately. And that's addressing the issue, but that doesn't address what players want out of PvP. You know what I mean? They want something that forces players to have ground combat without the ornithopters. At least that's what I want. And on the flip side, there's the lack of meaningful PvE. Players aren't asking for simple bug fixes. They want substance. They want dungeons. They want a real ground combat PvP mode or arena with structure, not just chaos. They want reasons to log in beyond, farm more spice, and keep your base from losing power. And here's Funcom's response so far, because of course they're going to respond to this after all the backlash. And to give them credit, they've been quick on the patching. In the first few weeks alone, PvP zones were scaled back after community backlash. New safe zones were added in the deep desert. Exploits and bugs have been patched in nearly every update. And these bug fixes, they matter, of course. Like I said, it's the culture of game development. You have to do this. And it also shows that Funcom is listening in a way. But the real issue is fixing bugs doesn't create replay value. It doesn't give us a reason to stay logged in once the bugs are gone. Right now, the game's foundation is solid, but foundations don't keep people around either. Players need more than survival loops. They need goals. They need PvE dungeons to grind. And I know I keep reiterating stuff like this, but this seems like it should be common for game development. Aren't game developers usually gamers, or am I mistaken? Because a ground PvP arena mode is a system that makes losing a fight sting less and winning feel more meaningful. And when nearly 80% of your player base walks away in less than 2 months, you can't pretend these gaps aren't there. But here's also how the developers responded, right? Funcom CEO 𝐜𝐴Z𝐽𝐻, if I'm pronouncing that right, has already said they're in this for the long haul. He even promised that Dune Awakening has years worth of plans ahead. And that's great to hear. Promises don't stop a player drop. Content does. And that's where we are right now. Dune Awakening is not a bad game in the least. In fact, it's one of the most ambitious survival MMOs we've seen in years. The foundation is strong. The world is rich. And you can see Funcom's effort in every patch note and hotfix they've pushed. But here's the truth. A foundation isn't enough either. Players didn't drop off because the concept of Dune Awakening isn't compelling. They dropped off because there's not enough to do once you lived in that world for a while. Yes, the bug fixes matter. Yes, the safe zones and PvP tweaks matter, but those changes don't create the kind of replay value that makes you log in every day, week after week. The game needs anchors. It needs the kind of content that keeps you chasing something, whether that's PvE dungeons with real rewards, structured PvP that feels more than just chaos in the desert, or meaningful progression systems that give wins and losses more weight. Because if that doesn't happen, this trend won't just stop on its own. The good news, there's still time. It's only been less than 2 months. Funcom has already said they're in this for the long haul, and that's a good sign. The question is now whether they'll start filling those gaps before players completely walk away. Because, October we got some bangers hitting, right? We have Arc Raiders coming out. We have Borderlands. There are just a lot of great games coming out this year. So you guys better be careful with the way that you develop and add things to the game. You need to retain your player base and create something that players are going to remember so they can come back and find a reason to play. So here's what I'll say. I still believe in Dune Awakening. I'm still building, testing, and seeing the potential for something incredible here. But I'm also not blind to what's happening. Anyways, I'm pretty much done rambling about this. I just wanted to bring this to light, let you know what was going on with the statistics from SteamDB and everything that's been happening lately. I'm not blind to this. I know I've been making videos excited, but this had to be addressed. And I want to know what you think in the comment section below. And if you're still here listening to me, you're a GOAT, and I appreciate it. So like the video if this video intrigued you, and subscribe to my channel if you feel inclined. I'll see you in the next one. Be right out.